Many recognize Edith Piaf's unmistakable voice in timeless classics like La vie en rose and Non, Je ne regrette rien, songs that evoke a deep sense of nostalgia and longing. Every emotion she felt, she sang. Every hardship she endured, she channeled into her music. Her life, filled with passion and tragedy, shaped the lyrics that made her France's most beloved chanteuse. From the very beginning, Piaf knew how to tell a story, especially about herself. While her birth certificate recorded her birthplace as Hospital Tenon in Paris, she preferred a more dramatic version. According to her, on December 19, 1915, her mother never made it to the hospital. With no ambulance arriving in time, she claimed she was born on the front steps of 72 Rue de Belleville. Whether fact or embellishment, the tale set the stage for a life that would be as theatrical as her music. Her name, Edith, carried a legacy of courage and sacrifice. She was named after Edith Cavell, a British nurse executed just 2 months before Piaf's birth for aiding French soldiers in escaping German forces during World War I. Cavell's bravery and selflessness made her a national hero, and in a remarkable twist of fate, Piaf herself would go on to show similar defiance and risk her life in World War II. While Cavell's name honored sacrifice, Piaf's early years were marked by abandonment. Her mother showed little interest in raising her and left her in the care of her maternal grandmother. Eventually, her father, Louis-Alphonse Gassion, took custody, but as World War I raged on, he had little choice but to make a difficult decision about how to care for his young daughter while serving in the military. Louis Gassion was a street performer, an acrobat with a natural theatricality, traits that would later surface in his daughter. Originally from Normandy, he made his living performing acts in public squares and on street corners. However, in 1916, he answered the call to war, leaving Piaf in the care of his mother, a woman whose profession would have a lasting influence on the young girl's early life. Piaf's paternal grandmother ran a bordello in Bernay, Normandy. When her father left for war, this house of ill repute became her home, and its workers became her caregivers. Though unconventional, these women raised her with resilience and strength. The environment exposed her to life's harshest realities early on, but it also gave her an unshakable toughness, one that would later define her artistry and fuel the raw emotion in her voice. Looking back on her adult relationships, Edith Piaf traced her struggles with men to her unconventional upbringing in the bordello. She later admitted that she had learned from an early age that when a man called for a woman, she was never supposed to refuse. This ingrained mindset would shape her romantic entanglements for years to come. However, before her adulthood brought its own challenges, Piaf faced an even greater battle, one that nearly robbed her of a normal childhood. As a young girl, Piaf developed keratitis, a painful inflammation of the cornea that left her temporarily blind. The condition was severe, and for a time, it seemed as though she might never regain her sight. Moved by her suffering, her grandmother and the other women in the bordello were determined to help. But rather than turn to doctors, they sought healing through faith. Pooling their money together, they funded a pilgrimage in honor of Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux, praying for a miracle. Against all odds, Piaf's vision improved significantly, an event that those around her considered nothing short of divine intervention. Whether through faith or fate, the young girl could see again, and with her eyesight restored, her dreams took shape. She was ready to embrace the world, and she wanted the world to embrace her. By the time she turned 14, Piaf was ready to perform. She joined her father, who had returned from the war, in his street acts. Setting up on busy corners in Paris, she sang as he entertained crowds with acrobatics. Her powerful voice captivated bystanders, drawing crowds who were mesmerized by her raw emotion. It was here, on the streets, that Piaf first experienced the magic of holding an audience in the palm of her hand, a feeling that would drive her for the rest of her life. Just a year into her street performing days, she had an unexpected reunion that changed everything. Piaf met her half-sister Simone Momoni Berthaud, or at least that's what she was told. So little is known about Momoni's true origins that some have speculated she wasn't actually Piaf's sister at all. But regardless of their blood ties, the two became inseparable. They performed together on the streets, surviving on whatever money they could earn, and forged a sisterly bond strong enough to withstand the many storms life would throw their way. With her street performances bringing in enough money to get by, Edith Piaf finally gained a sense of independence. She and Momone left the bordello behind and moved into a tiny room at the Grand Hotel de Clermont. Life in their modest new home suited them, and they continued singing across suburban Paris to make ends meet. But their freedom wouldn't last. Life had more challenges in store. In 1932, Piaf met Louis Dupont, a man who soon moved in with her and Momone. Their already cramped living situation became even more tense. Dupont strongly disapproved of Piaf's unstable lifestyle as a street singer, insisting she find a more traditional job. But singing was her passion, and she refused to give it up. The tension between them grew, leading to arguments that would ultimately force Piaf to make one of the most life-changing decisions of her young life. Everything shifted when Piaf discovered she was pregnant. Under pressure from Dupont, she reluctantly stepped away from street performing and took a factory job making funeral wreaths. In February 1933, at just 17 years old, she gave birth to her daughter, Marcel. But motherhood was not the fulfilling experience she had imagined. It quickly became clear that she wasn't ready for it. Still barely out of her teenage years, Piaf had little interest in raising a child. She longed to sing, to perform, to chase the life she had always dreamed of. Her apathy toward Marcel horrified Dupont, and their disagreements became increasingly bitter. Eventually, a heated argument ended with Piaf storming out, taking Momone and Marcel with her. She moved to a new place, determined to continue living on her own terms. But Dupont wasn't about to let their daughter stay in such unstable conditions. Piaf and Momone eventually found themselves in Pigalle, the heart of Paris's red light district. It was here that Piaf began performing at Lulu's, a lesbian cabaret where she drew in audiences of outsiders, people who, like her, had struggled and lived on the fringes of society. In this setting, she found her voice in chansons réalistes, songs that captured the rawness of life, love, and hardship. It was an environment that suited her perfectly, a place where she could channel her pain into music. But while she poured her soul into singing, her young daughter remained at home, neglected and waiting. Now staying at the Hôtel Au Clair de Lune, Edith Piaf continued to focus on her performances, often leaving Marcel alone while she and Momone worked the streets. Her former partner, Louis Dupont, was horrified by the child's living conditions and decided to take action. He removed Marcel from Piaf's care, insisting that she return home. Desperate to reunite their family, he pleaded with her to give up her unstable lifestyle, even going as far as threatening that she would never see her daughter again if she refused. But Piaf, following a painful pattern she had experienced with her own mother, made the same heartbreaking choice. She did not return. Prioritizing her career over motherhood, she let Dupont take full custody of Marcel, though she continued to provide financial support. However, she remained absent from the toddler's life, a decision that would soon haunt her. Tragedy struck when Marcel fell ill with meningitis and died at just 2 years old. Piaf was devastated, and though she rarely spoke of it, she would never fully escape the guilt of abandoning her child. Despite this deep personal loss, Piaf's fortunes took a turn in 1935. While performing on the streets of Paris, she was discovered by Louis Leplay, a well-known nightclub owner with a sharp eye for talent. He offered her a chance to perform at Le Journeys, an exclusive club frequented by Paris's wealthy elite. The opportunity was life-changing, but it also came with risks. Many of the club's patrons were rumored to have ties to the criminal underworld. Fortunately, Leplay treated her like family, shielding her from the dangers of the scene while guiding her toward success. It was Leplay who helped shape Piaf's image, even down to her iconic wardrobe. He took her shopping, selecting a simple black dress that would become her signature look, one that exuded both vulnerability and strength. At the time, she wasn't even known as Edith Piaf. Born Edith Gassion, she gained confidence under Leplay's mentorship as he encouraged her to embrace her raw emotional presence rather than hide it. He saw her fragility not as a weakness, but as an asset, helping her craft a persona that would captivate audiences. Standing just 4 feet 8 inches, Piaf had an unassuming physical presence, but her voice was anything but small. Recognizing this striking contrast, Leplay gave her the name La Môme Piaf, meaning the little sparrow, a nod to both her petite stature and her powerful soaring vocals. Determined to make her a sensation, he launched a major promotional campaign for her debut at Le Journeys, ensuring that Paris would soon know the name of this extraordinary little sparrow. The anticipation surrounding Edith Piaf's debut at Le Journeys paid off in spectacular fashion. On opening night, she captivated Paris, delivering a performance so raw and vulnerable that it left the audience spellbound. Among those in attendance was the legendary Maurice Chevalier, a testament to the buzz surrounding her. In the dimly lit nightclub, Piaf didn't just sing, she poured out her soul, revealing the depths of her pain and passion. This emotional authenticity would become her trademark, propelling her toward stardom. Her success at Le Journeys opened doors she had only dreamed of. She recorded her first songs, landed a role in a film, and formed a creative partnership with Marguerite Monod, a composer who would play a crucial role in shaping her music. It seemed like nothing could stop her rise. But just as she was beginning to feel secure in her newfound success, the darker side of Paris's underworld caught up with her. Many of the club's patrons had ties to organized crime, a connection that would soon lead to disaster. In 1936, tragedy struck. Louis Leplay, the man who had discovered her and set her on the path to fame, was murdered by gangsters. The shocking crime sent ripples through Paris, and to make matters worse, Piaf found herself at the center of the investigation. Authorities suspected she had been complicit in the crime, and she was subjected to a grueling police interrogation. Though she was ultimately cleared of any involvement, the damage was done. The press painted her as a woman entangled with criminals, and her career was suddenly on the verge of collapse. Determined to reclaim her reputation, Piaf turned to Raymond Asso, a skilled lyricist who knew how to rebrand an artist. He helped her shed the negative associations from her past, crafting a new image that distanced her from Leplay's shadowy connections. He insisted she go by Edith Piaf, solidifying her stage identity, and forbade her from associating with anyone who might jeopardize her career. Most importantly, he encouraged her to embrace the tragedies of her life and use them to fuel her music. The plan worked, marking the beginning of a powerful new era in her career. Asso's influence on Piaf extended beyond music. He wasn't just her mentor, he became her lover, and in his own mind, her tamer. According to biographer Carolyn Burke, Asso saw himself as a dompteur, a trainer who would refine her wild instincts and impose discipline on both her personal and professional life. Their relationship was complicated and often fraught, but for a time it provided the structure she needed. And while her personal life remained turbulent, her voice soon reached far beyond France's borders, setting the stage for international superstardom. By the late 1930s, Edith Piaf had become one of France's most celebrated voices, and her fame began spreading beyond its borders. Radio broadcasts carried her music to America, introducing international audiences to her deeply emotive style. However, the very persona that had propelled her to stardom, a singer who embodied heartbreak and hardship, felt like a weight she couldn't shake. She longed to expand her repertoire beyond sorrowful ballads, but audiences clung to the melancholic songs that had made her famous. Despite her desire for artistic growth, Piaf remained confined to the emotional intensity of her signature sound. It would take years before she broke free from that image and recorded a song that captured a different side of her. Eventually, she would introduce La Vie en Rose, a track that showcased a more romantic and universal vision of life. The song would go on to become one of her most enduring classics, redefining her image in the process. When World War II broke out, rather than let the turmoil stall her career, Piaf used the time to expand her network and refine her craft. She surrounded herself with some of France's most renowned artists, including Maurice Chevalier and poet Jacques Bourgeat, collaborating on new music and perfecting her songwriting. Instead of being derailed by the war, she grew more ambitious, strengthening both her stage presence and lyrical storytelling. As her fame continued to rise, she took younger artists under her wing, mentoring emerging talents such as Léo Ferré, Charles Aznavour, and Yves Montand. Montand in particular caught her attention, not just as a performer but as a romantic partner. Their artistic chemistry flourished at Moulin Rouge, where their partnership captivated the cabaret scene. In 1944, Piaf and Montand became one of Paris's most talked about duos, both professionally and personally. Their time at Moulin Rouge elevated Montand's career, with Piaf pushing him to refine his performance skills and stage presence. Their brief romance burned intensely, but as Montand's own star began to rise and his fame grew to rival hers, their passion faded. Though their love affair ended, Piaf's influence had left an indelible mark on Montand, shaping him into the legendary entertainer he would become. In 1947, Edith Piaf penned Mais qu'est-ce que j'ai for Yves Montand, a song that catapulted him to national fame by the end of the year. However, as Montand's star rose, their relationship faded. No longer the protege, he had become an established performer in his own right, and the balance between them shifted. Their romance soon ended, and Piaf moved forward toward a love affair that would eclipse all others in her life, one that would bring her both immense joy and unbearable heartbreak. In the summer of 1948, Piaf met Marcel Cerdan, a celebrated French boxing champion. From the moment they met, she was completely consumed by love. There was just one complication. Cerdan was already married and had 3 children. Despite this, their passion was undeniable, and they carried on an intense whirlwind affair. Neither could have imagined just how brief their time together would be. Though Cerdan hated flying, Piaf begged him to visit her in New York in October 1949. Deeply in love, he agreed, overcoming his fears to reunite with her. But as his plane crossed the Atlantic, tragedy struck. The aircraft crashed, killing everyone on board. In an instant, Piaf's greatest love was gone. The loss devastated her. Racked with guilt, She couldn't shake the thought that if she hadn't insisted he come, he would still be alive. The grief consumed her. She had lost the man who meant everything to her, and the weight of that reality was unbearable. Chardin's death left a permanent scar, one from which she would never fully heal. Despite her overwhelming sorrow, Piaf attempted to go on with her career. Just one day after the accident, she tried to perform, but her grief was too great. She collapsed multiple times during the concert, unable to withstand the emotional and physical toll of her devastation. Each time, others rushed to help her off stage as the audience watched, witnessing a woman shattered by loss. In an attempt to numb the pain, she turned to self-destructive habits, setting her on a dangerous path that would haunt her for years to come. Overcome with grief, Edith Piaf sought solace in alcohol and illicit substances, but tragedy continued to follow her. In 1951, she was involved in a devastating car accident that left her with a fractured arm and 2 broken ribs. The injuries were severe, and to manage the pain, she was prescribed morphine, a drug that would soon take hold of her life. 2 more serious car crashes in the years that followed only worsened her condition, deepening her reliance on painkillers and pushing her further into addiction. Despite multiple attempts at rehabilitation, Piaf struggled to break free from her dependencies. Yet even amid her personal turmoil, her relentless need for love and devotion remained. She became infatuated with Louis Girardin, a champion cyclist, and convinced herself that his discipline and athletic lifestyle could be the key to her salvation. Clinging to the hope that he could help her regain control of her life, she poured her emotions into their relationship. Between 1951 and 1952, Piaf wrote 54 deeply passionate letters to Girardin, referring to him as her master and professor. She expressed her desire to be worthy of him, believing that through his guidance, she could overcome her struggles and reclaim her health. She saw in him a path to stability, but there was one major obstacle standing in their way. He was already married. Unable to let go, Piaf pleaded with Girardin to leave his wife so they could build a life together. She spoke of wanting a family, of children, of a future where she could finally find peace. But while her letters revealed an intense devotion, Girardin never fully reciprocated. He remained hesitant, unwilling to take the leap she so desperately wanted. Though he was captivated by Piaf's undeniable charm, Girardin eventually admitted that being with her was emotionally exhausting. More tiring, he said, than riding the Tour de France. In the end, he chose to stay with his wife, leaving Piaf heartbroken once again. But as always, she carried on. She would go on to marry another man. Yet love continued to be as tumultuous as the rest of her life, passionate, intense, and often ending in sorrow. In 1952, Edith Piaf married singer and actor Jacques Pils, with none other than Marlene Dietrich serving as her matron of honor. Their union, however, was short-lived, ending in divorce in 1957. Years later, in 1962, she married Seo Sarapo, a Greek singer and actor who was 20 years her junior. By that time, Piaf's frail health stood in stark contrast to Sarapo's youthful strength, making their physical differences all the more striking. Despite this, their love was genuine, and they sometimes performed duets together. But time was not on her side. Her body was failing, and she would not have long to enjoy her second marriage. While her personal life was filled with heartbreak and turmoil, Piaf's career only grew stronger. Throughout the 1940s and 1950s, international tours took her across Europe, South America, and the United States. At first, American audiences were skeptical of her petite frame and her melancholic little sparrow image, But it didn't take long for her to win them over. American crowds, accustomed to grand theatrical performances, were initially unimpressed by Piaf's simple black dress and diminutive stature. But once she began to sing, everything changed. Her voice, raw, emotional, and impossibly powerful, shattered all expectations. Soon, critics raved about her performances, and she became a frequent guest on The Ed Sullivan Show. She even headlined Carnegie Hall twice, solidifying her reputation as an international star and proving that her talent transcended language and cultural barriers. What few knew at the time was that Piaf had also played a daring role during the World War II. While she performed in German-occupied France, earning enough to afford a luxurious apartment, her most meaningful contribution came through her covert efforts to aid French prisoners of war. Using her fame as a shield, she took enormous risks to help those suffering under Nazi rule. During a visit to a POW camp near Berlin, Piaf devised a bold plan. She persuaded the camp's commander to let her take photographs with the prisoners, seemingly as a morale-boosting gesture. But back in France, she used those photos to obtain false identity papers, disguising the prisoners as free French workers. Through this daring act, she helped as many as 300 prisoners escape. In that moment, Piaf lived up to the heroic name she had been given at birth, Edith, after Edith Cavell, the British nurse who had risked her life to help soldiers escape during World War I. Like her namesake, Piaf had proven herself to be more than just a singer. She was a woman of immense courage. By 1959, Edith Piaf's health had deteriorated to a point of no return. Years of relentless performances, substance abuse, and emotional turmoil had taken a devastating toll on her body. She underwent multiple surgeries to treat severe stomach ulcers, yet despite the pain, she continued to perform. However, by 1962, the signs were undeniable. Her frail body was failing, and hope for recovery was fading fast. Her condition worsened rapidly. With her liver failing, she required frequent blood transfusions just to keep her alive. Her once vibrant frame had withered away, and her weight plummeted to a shocking 66 pounds. She spent her final months drifting in and out of consciousness in her villa in Place Cassier, nestled in the French Riviera. On October 10, 1963, at just 47 years old, Edith Piaf succumbed to an aneurysm brought on by liver failure. As the end approached, she left behind a haunting final reflection. Just before passing, Piaf whispered what would become her last words: "Every damn fool thing you do in this life, you have to pay for." Having lived passionately, loved recklessly, and endured immense suffering, she believed that every moment of joy and every mistake carried a price. That raw truth, embedded in her songs, would continue to resonate with audiences long after her voice had fallen silent. Despite her immense cultural significance, the Catholic Church refused to grant her a funeral mass due to her history of divorce and tumultuous personal life. However, no decree could stop the flood of grief that poured into the streets of Paris. More than 100,000 mourners gathered for her funeral procession, bringing the city to a standstill. For the first time since World War II, traffic in Paris came to a complete halt as fans from all walks of life united in mourning the little Sparrow. But Edith Piaf was destined to be remembered far beyond the city where she once sang on street corners. In a celestial tribute to her legacy, Soviet astronomer Lyudmila Georgievna Karachkina named an asteroid in her honor, 3772 Piaf. Now, while her physical body rests beneath the Parisian sky, her name soars through the universe, and her music continues to echo across time, forever captivating those who hear her unforgettable voice. Edith Piaf's legacy continues to echo through the streets of Paris and beyond. Her music, filled with raw emotion and poetic storytelling, remains a national treasure, capturing the beauty and pain of life in a way few artists ever could. Though her life was marked by tragedy, her voice and spirit live on, immortalized in her unforgettable songs. What are your thoughts on Edith Piaf's extraordinary yet heartbreaking journey? Let us know in the comments, and if you love deep dives into the lives of legendary artists, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out more untold stories of the icons who shaped music history.